Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Reading City Council. We're having a workshop on the Civic Auditorium property. This is workshop number 3. And our first item is we're calling to order the meeting. And our second item is a roll call.
Councilmember DeQuisto.
I'm here.
Mazzano. Present. Schrader.
Here.
Winter.
Here.
And Mayor Resner is absent.
Okay, our item number 3 is a presentation regarding the status of the City of Reading owned Civic Auditorium properties, inclusive of covenants, city cost burdens, grant restrictions, acquisition dates, and other items needing special consideration. And we have divided the agenda into 2 parts, number 3A, which is 3A, and number 4, and we're inviting public comments for both. And if you've submitted a card and we're not sure which number you wrote or which item you'd like to speak on, we're going to ask you that when we call your name, okay? So the first presentation is from the city, and the second presentation under item 4 will be the presentation of the unsolicited offer. Okay, begin.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Mayor and members of the council. So as you just noted, we're going to dive a little deeper into the properties at hand and the background, a little bit of history. I do want to let everybody know that it's a rather long presentation compared to what we normally would give. There's a significant amount of information. I also will preface this by saying that staff has been working very hard over the last few weeks to pull all this together, but there is a significant amount of information, and there would be more information to gather if the council continues to try to move down this path, whichever direction they go. There's quite a bit more information that we would like to verify or to dive a little deeper in. So some of what you'll hear tonight is going to be very precise, and others is going to be more generic in nature to give you an idea of the situation that each of these properties are in. In particular, we had Public Works and our city surveyor, Ken Iwamura, who spent a ton of time on this and pulling up records. We had a lot of help from the clerk's office and record research and from the communications team in putting this all together. And but most of all, it was kind of pulled together by Deputy City Manager Steve Bade, who will take over the mic here in a moment. I also want to mention that if you're listening from home, or I suppose even in the audience, we've uploaded this presentation on our website. So if you go to the main website, there's a banner, and you can click into this area here. And under workshop number 3, it says participate now. If you go in there, this presentation is available. And I mention that particularly for people who may be watching from home, because we are going through an upgrade of the chambers, but for now we still have this projector here. And this doesn't always come through as crisp. And so if somebody wants to follow along at home just by looking at a fresh PowerPoint, they can do so by accessing it on our website. And with that, I'll close my comments and have everybody just settle back. I wish we could serve you popcorn, but that's not allowed in the chambers. And I will hand it over to Steve Bade, who has been really the person who put this all together. So Steve, take it away.
Well, even though there may not be popcorn, I hope it's entertaining. Hopefully it's engaging for everyone. So good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, and welcome to the community. This workshop is broken into 2 separate categories, and the first portion is really going to provide the history of the city-owned parcels, and also, while the second portion will review each parcel's current use, ordinances, restrictions, leases, and expenditures and or revenues associated with each one. This slide here is a good representation. It takes back a little history for you. It's an 1890 historic photo of the subject area, and I think I'll point up here a few things. You can see there's a sawmill location right here, which is just adjacent to the cemetery, and then you'll have some farmland out here in the middle, which would be very close to where you see the Civic Auditorium property, and then over on the far right, you're going to see this mining ground area, and that was in 1890. In 1901, we could note that the railroad was built in 1872. The map shows the railroad running along the river. You can see it on that south edge, right? Whoops, doggone it, wrong piece. So right here on this south edge of the river, you can see where it runs parallel with it at that time. Then Free Bridge was constructed in 1884. Free Bridge is going to be down, it's going to be south. If you look on this edge here, this is going to be Free Bridge down on this end. And if you look at this, this is actually the old horse track, which is, just to orient you a little bit, that is where City Hall sits today, right on that space. Reed's Ferry started operation in 1851 and continued until Deeshorse Bridge was built in 1907. And then the railroad is later rerouted in 1939 when the trestle across the river was built in order to accommodate Shasta Lake. Because of the river bend, you'll notice in this photo, I want to point out that because the way the river bend is at this site, it caused the river velocity to slow, causing deposits of gravel and silt to occur in this area, which is really important for this next slide. Between 1939 and 1944, there was a Kuch's gravel pit, which put the gravel to work. Basically, there was 12.2 million tons of sand and gravel were quarried from this area to create 6 million cubic yards of concrete to build the dam. So if you think about that, it's about 162 million yards of concrete to construct that the dam, which is a lot of concrete. This postcard is a great image of the Kucher's aggregate processing plant. You can see that there's that white building right here. Within that facility is where you will find the monolith, that portion of the monolith that actually resides today in that area. 1937 was a significant year. This is the year that the Rodeo Grounds was acquired from the Christ and Francis Kuchers family. And so it's a significant, one of the first activities in that space at that time. 1946, here you can see where the railroad has been rerouted, and the train trestle is actually over the river. You can see that. I think we have a little plus sign up that way. You can see it there. And then this red plus sign right here would be where the Civic Auditorium property is today. Let's see, whoops. 1957 is notable. Here you can see where the Rodeo Grounds, those improvements, you can see the arena there, and that's a significant note on that map. And then also you can see, it's good to look at the river and how the river boundaries have shifted a bit, and that activity for that has changed. You can also see to the south a little bit the neighborhood that's being constructed down here. This is where you're going to find today Paris, Rome, Athens, those streets in that area. Here in 1960, this is actually a slide that represents the Benton and Kuchers properties. And this is, I'll go back a little bit further before 1965 and mention that in January of 1963, the Recreation and Parks Commission recommended that City Council acquire land in the area of Turtle Bay. That land would be given top priority in any list of lands to be acquired for the park and recreation purposes. Funding sources used for the acquisition of the private property owned by Ben and Kuchers were generally funded between a federal HUD open space land program and revenue sharing program, along with TOT and sales tax. In 1966, the purchase of the parcels was put to vote to the citizens. So in 1965, we can start with the Benton properties, the ones that are in the blue shade there, and the city adopted a resolution approving this purchase. And it was acquisition of approximately 25 acres that was adjacent to the Posse grounds, and that was for park and recreation purposes, and that was purchased from Francis Benton. That property at that time was, just for general reference, was valued at $10,000 per acre, so it was a $250,000 purchase and lease agreement. The properties were purchased in a sequential manner, basically. As you look at those, there's a variety of parcels in there, and you can see I think there's about a dozen in this space. But they were purchased sequentially, and then if they were not purchased at the time, the city leased them back from the Benton family. Let's see. Well, let me go back. So the Kuchers property is also so similar to the Benton properties. In 1966, the properties in pink were also sequentially purchased. They were purchased over about a 17-year period of time, and they were completed in 1983. So there's a significant number of parcels within this, I guess it's parcel map. And, I believe that some of the referencing within this map, you can see some of the old, whether you're looking at this little section here, it's probably where, some of that gravel island was at the time, and then some of the gravel space that was in here. And at those times, there were different parcels. And so they were all split. And so there's quite a few parcels in there. That's why they were done sequentially. But anyway, interesting process to review and understand. 1969, here, a good visual for the audience is really to see, now you're starting to see the I-5, and you can see at that time it was Highway 299, which today is Highway 44. You can see where a little bit more of improvements been done in, that around that Rodeo Grounds space. So it's an interesting image to remember. This slide is in reflection to the bird sanctuary. So in 1972, the Reading Municipal Code was amended to designate a bird sanctuary area. And so it's a wild bird sanctuary. And additional is really there for additional protection of wild birds to the specific area. And that really was meant for the protection of the birds, but then also just to benefit the community. So Turtle Bay and Turtle Bay East were declared a wild bird sanctuary. So basically, in general, no person shall hunt, pursue, kill, trap, take, or destroy any bird, and no person shall damage the nest or eggs of any bird within this bird sanctuary. So that is important to understand how that actually is applied across all the parcels in that space. This slide demonstrates, basically it reflects back to some HUD restrictions based on those purchase agreements and the funding that went along with those. And you can see, there's the red HUD are still HUD restricted properties. They could be repealed by resolution. This is allowable due to a 1983 legislation that repealed the use of restrictions for the open space program, thereby removing all federal restrictions on the use of the open space site. And in 2014, a resolution was adopted to remove the HUD restrictions, and those parcels that they removed from are in green, and that is basically a reflection of the Sheridan Hotel property acquisition and construction of that property. The beige area shows this area is basically tied to the State River Parkways grant program, and this is further information about that will be recognized as I go through the individual parcels here in a bit. The floodplain, it's important to know that there's a floodplain that's been designated in that space. And so when you have a floodplain, there's not issues, but there's restrictions that go along with that. And there's also protective areas within that floodplain. So it's good to get a visual on that. This one is a visual map noting active leases within the property area. So you can see here we have a Turtle Bay lease is noted. We have also a parking lease, which is up in that blue. This is a north parking lot lease here. We have the Convention Center lease. We have the Rodeo Grounds lease. And then we have the Turtle Bay boat ramp lease that are effective in that space. With the exception of the private parcels, these parcels are also in the Reading Parks Trails and Open Space System map and also part of the park inventory. So I'd like to make that note also. So what I just went over was pretty much like the history and the overview of how things apply to all parcels. And so just keep that in mind as we go through the next parcels. We're going to start just kind of individualizing them and pointing out some significant points with each one. Let's see here. So let's see. This is 17. So this is a good visual. Just a good visual, just showing an aerial looking east. And the first property we're going to focus on is what's considered a city green space parcel. This parcel is a 114-acre parcel. It's covering portions of the Sacramento River and Turtle Bay East and extends to the center portion of the Sundial Bridge. it has, here, this is giving you an overlay. Here, what we're just pointing out is that there's ordinance associated with this parcel are really limited to the Reading Municipal Code, and it's Reading Municipal Code 10.26. It's the Sacramento River area regulations, and it really gives the police power of the city to protect that Sacramento River, whether that's the speeds or its violations on the river or its littering. And it also provides the Director of Development Services authorization to approve special events that might occur in that space. There are some grant restrictions that go along with that property. Let's see here. So, let me get to this one. There we go. So the grant restrictions, the main one here is going to be this Prop 1. It's a California Urban Rivers grant. It has a, well, we're going to call this a MUGA. So it's a Memorandum of Understanding Grant Agreement. You're going to hear me say MUGA a few times as we go through this because they're connected to a number of the grants that are associated with this area. And this Prop 1 grant, they're negotiating a MUGA for that, just for the maintenance and operation of that facility, and it'll probably extend out to around 2040. There's also a Turtle Bay Boat Access Facility grant. This is really related to the Riverfront Park Kayak launch. And then we have this STPLE 5068. That's a Caltrans grant that was provided as part of the Sundial Bridge deck, and that's how it was part of that construction project. There's a Wildlife Conservation Board grant, and then we also note that there are a number of HUD open space agreements, and those open space agreements that are noted are all associated with when the property was purchased. One other thing that I would note is that the Proposition 1 grant really is, it's a grant that it touches mainly the rodeo. It goes from the edge of the Rodeo Grounds and the Turtle Bay Museum. And so it was really, the grant went for eradication of invasive species, river channel restoration, improved public access, and then water quality infrastructure. I'd like to also note that the River Parkways grant, that is pretty much the Sacramento River Trail extension from the Sundial Bridge to 44, and then they also repaired 80 acres of riparian habitat with that grant. Let's see. So we have, all right. Here we are in 2002. We want to note that the Sundial Bridge is constructed. Annual maintenance for the Sundial Bridge and the nearby restrooms it costs approximately $184,000. Additionally, we have approximately $13,000 that the city pays for to replace glass deck panels, and then also about $2,000 in staff labor for the maintenance of that. In 2012, we had the Sundial Bridge Drive dedication is completed, and the public street and utility dedication was completed for public street and utility purposes. This pretty much wraps up this particular open space parcel. This parcel has a variety of state grants used to preserve the riparian habitat. Any property modifications would be subject to state and city council approval, but improvements in the areas really cannot be disturbed.
Director,
Yeah, go ahead.
we have a question from Councilmember.
I just thought it might be helpful if the council could ask you questions after each parcel, just to clarify. So
Certainly.
this parcel looks like it's pretty locked up. Like there's very little we would do with this, or even want to do with this area. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's there's a number of grants that are either have been completed that have overlaying restrictions on there, or there's even current grants where improvements are being completed and MUGAs are being negotiated to maintain those improvements. So where there's been state funding and they've improved those properties, say it's the trail extension or it's some of that riparian habitat, then yeah, we would want to make sure that those are going to be maintained as they are, and they would be, I would say, difficult to do any development there.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, we'll go into the Turtle Bay easement parcel. And let's see. So this slide here gives you a good visual of that parcel. It's really the green colored parcel. The two purple ones are really private property, and I'll go over those in a little bit on that. Oops. So the subject parcel is actually 43.2 acres. It's home of the Turtle Bay Exploration Park that includes the museum, Paul Bunyan's Forest Camp, Botanical Gardens, the museum store and coffee bar, and then the south portion of the Sundial Bridge, and also the monolith. Here we just want to make sure that we can acknowledge some of the key contributors that are also part of that Turtle Bay. We note the McConnell Foundation, California Department of Parks and Recreation, City of Redding, KDK Foundation, the California Department of Natural Resources, the Fitzpatrick family, the Lutz family, Sierra Pacific Foundation, the Johannesson family, and the Baumbauer family. There are some ordinances that apply to this, and one is the Wild Bird Sanctuary, so you're going to see that multiple times throughout the presentation. In addition, when Turtle Bay is considered a park, so it is identified as a park within the Reading Municipal Code, and so we have some municipal code that apply based on consumption of alcoholic beverages, and then also public peace, morals, and welfare that are just standard operation with a park within the City of Reading limits. We have some grant restrictions that apply. One is California River Parksway Grant, which I mentioned earlier. We have the Riparian Habitat Restoration Grant, which is a Wildlife Conservation Board grant. We have the State of California Natural Resources Agency, and then a grant from them, plus a MUGA for the maintenance of those improvements that I mentioned earlier. These are along with the trail and also some of the improvements that connect you to the Sundial Bridge. And then also the Sundial Bridge deck grant from Caltrans, and then we have the Proposition 1 California Urban Grant Program that would apply also. In addition, we would also note that those HUD open space agreements were tied to those original purchases. The leases, so Turtle Bay lease, it was really meant for the purpose of constructing and operating a museum park. It's a 55-year lease. The first term goes out to 2047 with a 55-year option. There's a ground lease amendment that was done in 1996. It expands the premises to include additional parking. In 2005, there's a ground lease amendment to convey a portion of the premises of the state of California to facilitate freeway and overcrossing improvements. And then in June 2010, there's a ground lease amendment to assist or facilitate the financing and construction of the hotel. Basically, also as rent, the tenant agrees to undertake, they agreed to undertake and construct the operation of the museum park. So there is no rent collected there. That is their current agreement with that facility. This is a good visual to demonstrate the relationship between the Turtle Bay exploration park lease parcel and the adjacent private parcels. So you'll see there's a Turtle Bay parcel right there, and then as the two private parcels will be shown here in purple. So it just gives you a good visual of what that looks like. Here we have in 2013, the parcel map was completed for the McConnell Foundation purchase of lots 3 and 4. And then I'd like to also just mention that totals 14.17 acres for those two parcels. And parcel number 3 is home of the Sheridan Hotel. Okay, this has been a lot of information, so this is kind of that grab your breath and you know, got to wiggle in your seat a little bit out there. It's all right. So, but you know, this is actually kind of a neat picture because it gives a nod to the monolith. You see the structure of the monolith and its elevation, and then you look at above and you see how the Turtle Bay Museum took some of that into account when they designed that facility. So it's just a good photo to share with the group. Now we're going to move on to the Civic Auditorium parcels, which include 2 parcels. And this visual of the parcels shows you, the one where we have that parcel 15 and then parcel 26. They're significantly different in size. This site map really gives you a relation to the adjoining properties, and I'll go over some more information that's in that parcel map in just a bit. Here's a nice aerial photo of the Civic Auditorium main parcel. And you can see there'll be an overlay here to demonstrate how that sits with the existing improvements that are at that facility. As mentioned earlier, this property was acquired from Francis and Benton in 1965. The Civic Auditorium was constructed in 1969. There's a front elevation of the Civic Auditorium. It's opened in 1970 to host concerts, trade shows, business expos, and serve as a rental venue for large private and corporate events. Here's a visual of a variety of the elevations associated with the Civic Auditorium. The property ownership is the Reading Joint Powers Finance Authority. Council sits as the board to the Reading Joint Powers Finance Authority. In general, it's really just another agency of the city that owns that facility. It's a 20.7 acre parcel, and the Civic Auditorium really, when we talk about that parcel, it's really the Civic Auditorium itself with the adjacent north and south parking lots and both lawns. There are some ordinances that apply to this, and the ordinance that does apply is the Wild Bird Sanctuary we mentioned earlier. There is a lease. In October 2011, the city entered into a lease agreement with Advance Reading for the operation and management of the Civic Auditorium. The lease expires in December of 2002. It expires December 31st, 2021. An amended and restated lease agreement for a proposed 10-year term is going to be presented to the City Council next week at the November 16th meeting. There's a Turtle Bay parking lease that's also associated with that property. We do have some city expenditures that are associated with that parcel. City staff maintains the auditorium grounds and then also the Turtle Bay boat ramp. It's about a $75,000 annual expenditure, and that does not include any capital improvements that occur in that area. They vary each year. Advance Reading currently pays rent in the approximate amount of $22,000 per month. And it's also good to note that there's an approximate debt amount of $60,000 that is in relation to some prior capital improvements that were done at the Civic Auditorium. Those are projected to be paid by 2024. We'd also like to note that as part of the lease agreement with the Civic Auditorium, there are some notable community events that occur at that facility. We have Cool April Nights. We have the Freedom Festival. The rodeo uses it for parking during their events, their week events, and then week-long events. And then we also have the 3-on-3 basketball tournament that occurs there each year in June. This parcel it gives you a good visual of the second parcel related to the Civic Auditorium. It's a small sliver of land that's at the south end of that, and adjacent to that, the former parcel, what the parcel I was just talking about. This is just a good visual representation of the parcels together, and you'll see how this one slides in here and gives you a good relation point to the actual parking locations that is included in that parcel, and also a portion of the Civic Auditorium Drive.
Excuse me, we have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, just when you're done with the parking parcel, before you move on to the next, I just wanted to ask you some questions about the AR property or Civic property.
Okay, yeah, easy enough. So this slide is, this parcel is a portion of the South Civic Auditorium parking lot, and really, like I said, it has that a portion of Auditorium Drive. There's one ordinance that applies, and that's a Wild Bird Sanctuary. And then also there's we have the MUGA grants that are tied to this parcel also. So keep that in mind. So before I go to the EDC,
Yeah, I had two questions. First, and on both of these, let me ask you this one. How does the bird sanctuary ordinance apply to these properties?
Well, it applies to it because the ordinance was put into place and it basically covered the whole area. So in 72, when they put that forth, they were covering the whole area from the whole Civic Auditorium property and the road, that rodeo area and the
So what does that mean for development? Any change in use for development there?
No, I think it would be something you want to be aware of. That you have to be, you have to note if you're going to doing development there, you still have this bird sanctuary that you have to respect in regard to any development, and that would be also tied to probably some of the environmental considerations that go along with any development. But I'll let Barry jump in.
Yeah, I would just make it very simple and say that the Wild Bird Sanctuary Ordinance just simply means don't bother the birds, and that's really about it.
Okay. And then
It's not a land use restriction, in other words.
Okay, gotcha. My second question was related to the age of the facility. Do you have any idea of the lifespan of that facility? You talked about the $75,000 annual cost to the city, but what are there some upcoming? I'm just concerned about upcoming infrastructure needs of that facility, the age. What would it cost to replace a facility like that for the city? Because at some point it's going to have an end of life.
That's one of the unanswered questions for this evening that we will probably have to bring back to City Council. I just know the annual maintenance. I did not find out what the longevity of that facility is, but we could certainly bring it back.
Well, and I can give you some anecdotal information on that. So, like any concrete structure like this, it's pretty well built, and actually the length of life of that facility could be very, very long. There's many old buildings, but there is an increasing maintenance that's required. There will be increasing code requirements that you'll have to upgrade it. We spent a fair amount of money over the last 5 years on the window, on the facade, on the fronts, on the roof. We have about a $2.5 million HVAC system, or more than that. And as far as cost, that needs to be replaced. The seating needs to be replaced at over $1 million. There are a number of other elements. We don't have ADA restrooms in there, as you know, in terms of they're both sort of up and down the stairs. We have some requirements to fix that over the long term. And so I wouldn't necessarily look at it from the standpoint of what's the replacement cost of that building per se, but what would be the life cycle cost to maintain that building for the next 50 years, and that would be quite substantial, and we could certainly estimate that. But annualized amount is what we could bring back in terms of making some estimates.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember DeQuisto.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, do you know how much it cost to build the Civic Center and where that funding came from?
I do not know that, Barry.
I don't know that offhand. I don't know if Director Niemer has an idea. But I believe it was bonded, but I don't know that for sure. I think there were some grants and some bonds associated with that. We can certainly bring that back as well next week.
If you could, and would it be fair to say that presumably those have been paid off, given the time frame? Or if you could find out the status, whether they've been paid or not?
Yeah, there is debt on the building, but it's about $60,000, and it's associated with a different bond issuance that was made in the 90s. And for this particular facility, it was for the re-roofing in the mid-90s. And there's about $60,000 left on that bond to pay off.
And then I guess the second question, I think you've already answered it, had to do with deferred maintenance. Can you give us a more reasonable estimate of I mean, $2.5 million for the HVAC and $1 million for something else right away, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I should know this, and I apologize that I don't, because I've just seen the numbers pretty recently, but it's in the neighborhood of $10 million over the next 10 years, 15 years, that will probably be necessary into that building.
And would it be safe to say that under the terms of the proposed lease with Advance Reading, that's a cost the city will pay as opposed to Advance Reading?
Yeah, so the agreement that the council will consider basically anticipates that Advance Reading would pick up the cost of the seat replacement, and all the rest of the capital improvements is the responsibility of the city.
So the vast majority would be city responsibility?
Absolutely.
Okay. And one other item, do you know if there's a termination clause in that lease, like the Rodeo lease has a 1-year termination? Is there a termination clause in that?
Not in the current one that that is expires in December, and that will be a topic of discussion for the council next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right. The next parcel is what we're calling the Shasa Economic Development Corporation parcel. It is an odd-shaped parcel that includes portions of the Auditorium Drive along with it. The building within the property was constructed in 1985, and it houses it basically was built to house the Convention and Visitors Bureau operations. There's a lease associated with this parcel. In August 2018, Shasta EDC executed a 3-year land and building lease agreement In August 2021, the lease was extended for 1 year. Shasta EDC pays annual rent in the amount of $35,544. And the rent revenue is used to pay for building maintenance costs, including ongoing contract expenses for HVAC service and pest control, replacement costs for flooring, roofing, and then also parking lot repaving with that facility. This is a good aerial photo with you'll see this parcel overlay come in. You can see how that relates to the space that we are analyzing. And here's another different view as you're looking east, as you see that parcel come into play, and how it's adjacent to the Civic Auditorium parcel. Includes that Auditorium Drive space and then the building, which is in the eastern corner. The next parcel is the Rodeo Grounds parcel. This aerial image, I want to point out that this is really demonstrating the parcel itself. So within this parcel, there's 3 separate areas. And so I just want to bring that to your attention with this slide. It's a 16.74 acre parcel. Here we have, this slide demonstrates how the Rodeo Grounds lease. And so this is the space that they lease. It doesn't include the boat ramp. It doesn't include that parking lot that's they're kind of surrounding in that space. There's a great aerial photo of that property and how it relates with the adjacent properties. You can, just for general perspective, for those that have not been down there, there's this main arena and grandstands. There's a livestock area, livestock pens over in this area. There's a warm-up arena, and then they have some of their facilities outlying that property. And I want to take just a second to thank. I had, as on the fly, I got a chance to meet with some of the Asphalt Cowboys, the Reading Rodeo Association members, and Bennett and also Barron and Les. So just want to thank them for their time, taking me around and explaining, and also just being very proud of their facility. And so they're very proud to show it off. So thank you very much. This is just a shot, is a south side view of the grandstands and a photo of the livestock pens. The day we were out there, it was raining, so I apologize, but we've had a lot of rain lately. So, and let's see, this is the Reading Rodeo Association Clubhouse, and you can see up there. There's the backside of the facility. You can see in the one upper corner, and then you also see the arena there in that one main photo on the right. The rodeo grounds I had mentioned earlier, they were purchased in 1937. The first rodeo was in 1948. The Reading Rodeo Association has leased this property for more than 72 years. That property includes the Asphalt Cowboys Clubhouse, the Reading Rodeo Association Clubhouse, which they have 4 different clubs that are operating out of that facility. The grandstands, the arena, which holds about 6,000. They have concession stands, livestock pens, a warm-up arena, and then also recently, over the last few years, they've been using it as a wildfire evacuation center for a number of outlying area and outlying area people that were affected by fires, and able to bring their animals and livestock, everything down there to be in a safe space. So thank them for that. This, for grant restrictions, it goes back to the California Urban Rivers Grant Program, and it's all tied to just being associated with one parcel, not specifically to that lease, but to that parcel. Then we also have the Reading Riffle Restoration Grant, and then we also have the MUGA that's going to be negotiated and how that would be played out in this. The Reading Rodeo Association leases, lease has a 10-year term. It expires in July 31st, 2026. Any termination would require a written notice and 1 year in advance. Since 2016, the Reading Rodeo Association has been completing a variety of accessibility improvements as part of their lease conditions to the rodeo grounds. The Reading Rodeo Association also maintains the rodeo grounds with no city staff assistance. This is giving you a visual overlay of this parcel. And then this next portion of that just shows how the boat ramp relates to that leased space and within the parcel itself. So the boat ramp parcel was built in 1969, and there's a couple of grants that go along with that parcel, and those are noted with the public access grant. And then we also have a California Department of Fish and Wildlife grant for some improvements that were done to the boat ramp. And this is just a picture that gives you a good view of the Turtle Bay boat ramp parking area. And then the next one is just the boat launch area. You can see, and this is a very busy place on a daily basis, from what I gather. Here's the third and final portion of this parcel. It is actually the green space, and so this is just a parking facility that's actually related to the advanced rating lease. So they use that as part of their facility. And so that notes that. And so this slide, I wanted to bring this back into perspective because we've mentioned there's a number of grants that are associated with all these parcels. And this is a good visual because one of the main grants is a Prop 1 grant. And so this is basically to eliminate some confusion, as you're throwing all these grants around. But I want everybody to understand that this is, these grants touch the parcel. And for that, each grant gets a MUGA. And that MUGA is then used for operation and maintenance of those improvements that are tied to those grants. So I just want to show what that looks like and from this parcel perspective. And this slide brings us back to where we had started. There's a total of 6 city parcels, and they total or comprise of about 198 acres. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for your time, and this concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, we are available. There's a variety of staff that help out with this, so it depends on the question.
Thank you, Mr. Bade. We have a couple questions from Councilmember Mark Mazzano.
Excellent bit of information there, Steve. I appreciate that. I just want to be clear. The Rodeo Grounds, that's not costing the city any money? They take care of everything?
Yes, they maintain that space. The city building maintenance, they do not maintain that space as part of
They're
their.
not costing us a dime.
No. They
Great.
pay $50 annually for their lease.
But they're fixing it. They
Yes.
take care of it.
They
mow
maintain
the
it.
grass.
Yes.
Wow. Do you have a picture, or is it this picture here that outlines everything that the unsolicited offer wants to purchase? We have all these parcels, and I'm kind of confused as to which ones they want to buy.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
that hasn't been determined.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be determined at a later date should the council go through the Surplus Property Act pursuit. But what we've discussed in the past is that all of the parcels that were discussed, as well as the private parcels, would be part of the master planning effort. But then any development would occur on some future determined pieces of property. Ideally, they would be the already developed properties. In other words, not likely into the green area where the trees and flora and fauna are, more likely to be focused on where the properties have already been developed.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Winter.
A couple of questions. I love the rodeo too, by the way. Absolutely want to keep the rodeo. I am concerned about the facility. It does seem rather old and probably needs some investment to bring it up to speed. So about that, do you have any idea of what would be needed to bring the rodeo grounds up, or what kind, or to maintain?
Yeah, I suspect we'll have a speaker or two tonight. Maybe that'd be
maybe
better,
you guys could
better
give us an
asked
idea of
them, yeah.
what's needed for that. And then the other question is usage on the rodeo grounds. And Steve, maybe you don't know that, but Director Niemer, if she's here, how many days are the rodeo grounds used out of a 365-day calendar year for events?
Yeah, I think that question's been asked quite a bit. I think there's a differentiation between, use as far as community-wide events versus use for the Rodeo Association or the Asphalt Cowboys or whatever. And I think, again, I suspect we'll have a speaker and ask them to address that. But in terms of community-wide events, it probably varies on a year-to-year basis between 5 and 20 days. But they have use year-round in terms of their usage. It just may not be a community-wide event.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more? Oh, Councilmember DeQuisto.
Thank you. You mentioned that most of these parcels are subject to this SB1 or the state grant?
Yeah, yes, that's Prop 1, the Prop 1.
Prop 1.
Correct.
And did you say something about that would require state approval in the event we wanted to sell those parcels?
Yes, so if there was any modification to that parcel, then there would have to be an agreement or approval from the state. We have received approval from the state in prior activity, so they will cut out or modify the parcel and and separate where those improvements were done from, say, the properties. If you take the Sheridan property or parcel 4, they did that similar there.
But that would be a separate step in the event the council decided to move forward with a sale.
Yes.
And do you know when in the process that would occur? Or maybe Mr. DeWalt, I assume you'd have to do something for surplus property declaration first and then get state permission? Or there's no answer for that question yet.
Yeah, there really isn't. But I mean, logically, that would kind of make sense, right? Before you start asking the state to release property, it'd be good to know whether it can be even developed or sold.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have any other questions? Well, we have some public comment. Our first speaker is Bennett Gooch, followed by Wayne Martin.
Thanks you, City Council and staff, for letting us come up here and speak for a few minutes. Before I get into what I had planned, let me talk a little bit and answer a couple questions that were just asked. What is needed? There's some stuff needed. Obviously, we've been tasked to update some ADA stuff for the last few years that we've had this lease going. So I don't know if you would include that or not, but there's a lot of things we would like to do. New announcers booth for one, some VIP seating and some upgrades of ramps and parking spaces and that kind of thing. But again, that's a lot of money, and with no long-term lease, it doesn't make any financial sense to do that. So that's what we're trying to get and accomplish. Days used, you're far off. You're way off base there. I mean, every time there's a fire, which we kind of have a lot around here, we occupy that for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, living down there to maintain and watch the livestock that people bring in so they don't have to worry about that, while we keep the homeless population away from them, trying to ride them. And that way, so that's 3-4 weeks right there at least, if not more, over the summertime. We do have barrel racing that we bootleg in once a week during the summertime. The problem is we would use it a lot more, but we can't. We don't have rights to the parking lot. We only have in our lease the rodeo week and one other weekend through the year. So how do you expect us to use it and do good for the city when we can't use those parking lot areas in those times? So anyway, back to where I was starting. My name is Bennett Gooch. I'm the president of the Reading Rodeo Association. We've been down there almost 75 years. As you can see, they did an excellent presentation of the little history timeline. It's pretty awesome to know that we've been part of that from almost day one there. So there's a lot of cool stuff that go on down there. The Reading Rodeo has a significant financial impact to the local economy every year, probably upwards in the $6 to $7 million range. I know it's hard to tell this year because we were 3 days instead of a whole week's worth of activities, and the 2 prior years, one was a rain-out 4 days, and we all took the 20-year off. So anyway, we hand out a lot of scholarships throughout the years. We advertise one, but the hearts of these guys, it's hard when you get 6 or 7 applicants to only pick one. It's difficult, so we usually fund more. We also are there every year to buy 4-H and FFA livestock auction items at the fair. We try to give back as much as we can. The event itself is very expensive to put on, so whatever we do make, we try to give back. We pretty much start from scratch every year, so we're pretty proud of that. Donations from Tough Enough to Wear Pink and Chicks and Chaps are made every year to stay local. We don't give them to organizations that go nationwide. We keep them local, and we search and we look for people that are in need here locally, and we take care of their needs first. And so there's a lot of that goes on. These guys have hearts of gold. In 2017, we needed to replace the arena lights. That cost us $300,000. That's out of our pocket. We worked really well with the city manager and RU to facilitate that and get it through the building department in a timely manner so that we can have it for use for the rodeo the next year. So that was awesome. But again, $300,000 a loan that we pay for, which must have been pretty impressive because the soccer park liked them so much that I think the city came down and wanted to put another set in the soccer park. So it's pretty good stuff. We started a conversation about a long-term lease to justify the improvements, and I was told the city needed to finish negotiations with Advanced Reading at that time, and they'd get back to us. I never heard anything. We're also told we probably wouldn't see anything more than a 10-year lease extension, and more realistically, probably a 5-year. That doesn't really help when we want to spend, upwards of a few $1 million to update things. 2019, we had 4 days of solid rain. In 2020, the world shut down. Reading City, or the Reading Utility Department, was outstanding to work with. They helped us figure out ways to pull back and save money and keep our utilities going while the world was shut down. Back in 2021, we needed a little bit of normalcy, so we put the rodeo on and we brought the community together, and I think it was needed. Again, in July, I reached out to the city manager about discussing the idea of long-term lease. We had a phone conversation. He did ask me how long it would take us to get out of there. It's a little kind of questioned that. We went on to investigate some other options. He asked for 3 weeks to get back to us. A week later, this proposal came across my phone. So there's a lot of doubt in these guys' minds on where we stand in this whole deal, especially with the extension of the Civic Center. Why are we doing that in the middle of a possible sale? And then a social media post wanting to know what the public thought if we should rebuild, leave it alone, or relocate. If we're a part of this, why are we asking the community if we need to relocate? Shouldn't that already be known that we're going to be a part of this redesign and redevelopment? So there's a lot of questions in our minds, and we would really, really like to have a seat at that negotiation table. I feel we deserve it. We've been there the longest, and I do believe that we should have some sort of say in what goes on. And like I said, it's something that we feel very strongly about.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Wayne Martin?
I just choose to withdraw.
Oh.
I got answers.
Okay. Thank you. Was there somebody who was going to speak on behalf of the Asphalt Cowboys? Okay, and your name?
Cameron Middleton.
Okay. Were you going to speak under 3A? Your card is not here for 3A.
I had figured for 4.
So do you want to wait till 4, or do you want to speak now?
We can wait for 4.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Mike Von Bachern, followed by Lon McCaslin.
Good evening. I don't know how many of you all remember the last time McConnell tried to relocate the rodeo grounds. They wanted to move it down to the northwest corner of 273 and Clear Creek Road. I live in the Westwood subdivision. My back fence went from there to the old Brown Ranch to Clear Creek Road. They wanted to relocate the rodeo grounds and brought in some, I'll call them salesmen. And it went from relocating the rodeo grounds to a $100 million horse park that the city taxpayers were going to have to buy a $100 million bond. And it was supposed to be paid back through tax revenues, which lucky for us, the city council there at that time declined to do it because the economy crashed right after that. And there would have been no tax revenues to pay for the bond, much less anybody using the horse park. The reason I'm here is when McConnell laid out their plans for their horse park, they put the veterinarian and the blacksmith shops right next to my back fence. And their drawing just showed white from their horse park on. And I went to McConnell and said, do you realize this is a subdivision with people's houses right there? And they said, yes, they knew. So if you deal with McConnell and relocating that horse park, I hope you would stand up for your constituents, because they will be terrible neighbors if they get the chance. To save a few tens of thousands of dollars will ruin their neighbors' property values and quality of life. They are not to be trusted as neighbors. They do good things for the community. They have nice things they create, but they're also very unscrupulous when it comes to dealing with other human beings and properties. That's pretty much all I need to say. Just keep an eye on them for me, please.
Thank you. Lon McCaslin, followed by Bruce Alexander.
I hope the red light doesn't go on. My name is Lon McCaslin. I was captain of the posse in 1979 and 80. And in 82, I was instrumental with the help of the sheriff, John Balma, in changing over to the Reading Rodeo Association. We upset a lot of folks, some of them in the yellow shirts, some of our own members. But we needed to make that move in 1982 for a number of different reasons. We did it in order to create a better relationship with the city of Reading and the business community in this community. As a posse, we were limited, but as a rodeo association, we branched out. We got more board members in that were local. If you want to say movers and shakers, go ahead and say that. But we did it in order to build that organization into the rodeo that it is today. The grandstands, we all signed our life away in order to put those grandstands in there. Back in 83 or 4, I've lost track. That's 38 years ago. A lot of things I forgot about over that period of time. But my point of coming tonight is just to explain to these folks how important this rodeo is to the community and the facilities down there for other things if they're allowed to do it. We've had concerts down there over the years. We've done a lot of other things, motocross, truck pulls, all that could happen again. And it could help this community create income and become a great place to live. And it is a great place to live. I got one question or two questions about the time frame. The posse wasn't created until the 40s. How could they buy the land down there when it weren't even created? I'm not sure. I'd be interested in knowing that. And the other thing, I think the first rodeo was 1949. I'm a little bit of a historian. I could be wrong. Again, 38 years ago, a lot happened between then and now. So anyway, I just want to end by saying I didn't plan on coming up here, but I did. And Bruce will back up some of what I've given you. Uh-oh, I'm on the clock. 27 seconds. All right, anyway, I want to thank the committee here and keep an open mind on what we would like to have happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce Alexander, followed by John, is it Dansky? So, This, we all have difficulties reading handwriting sometimes. Dunlap. Okay, well, that's okay. Bruce.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Bruce Alexander.
Bruce, go ahead, please.
My background, just so you know, I've been an engineer for almost 40 years and a member of Reading Rodeo for almost as long. During that time, I served on the board for over 20 years, and I was two-time president. And I was involved in a lot of these activities and leases and things in the past, so that's kind of what I want to talk about. One of the things that I get the impression that nobody's talking about is, what kind of a rodeo is this? You know, it's not a little small-town rodeo. We're in the Hall of Fame. We're in the top 30 rodeos every single year for the last 35 years. This is like having the San Francisco Giants in your backyard. And the concept of even moving us, things that would hurt the Reading Rodeo, just is unfathomable to me. I've lived here my entire life, and I think that the community supports the rodeo a lot, and I think the city could support the rodeo a lot more. You know, one of the things that you guys asked about was events. We used to put on events all the time when we didn't have a competition that actually had a master lease over the top of ours. In other words, the parking lots, as Bennett talked about, are significant to everything that we do. How do you put on a 5,000 person concert when you have no parking? How do you schedule that? How do you do that? So just something I wanted you to think about. You know, our competition is right next door. They actually have carte blanche use of the parking lots except for 2 times during the year. And so it's almost impossible to raise the money that we need. Now, we know we can raise the money that we need, especially with our standing in the PRCA and where we are in the whole rodeo circuit. But I'm hoping that you guys might, you know, research a little bit, take a look at some of the things that have been done. We were televised both years that I was president. Each time we had to expand the rodeo, which was a monstrous task. And thank you to everybody, Asphalt Cowboys and Reading Rodeo, who helped do all that. Without these guys, oh, by the way, I don't know if you know or not, but we are 100% volunteer. How many rodeos do you know of in the country are 100% volunteer? I'll tell you, there's only a handful. There's only a handful that are even on the same stage as we are. So anyway, you should be very proud of what the rodeo is, even with our meager existence down there. It just seems like we could expand that quite a bit and make a really big deal out of it with your support. One of the things I wanted to talk about briefly, too, is that I was the guy that was leading the charge back when Mike Warren was city manager here. We had these same issues. This was 20 years ago or so. And at that time, McConnell Foundation stepped up and said, we'll help you find a way to move and, you know, vacate the property, and it'll be really nice. I can tell you that that didn't go so well. That was 2 years of a waste of my time, basically. And I just don't imagine being a part of this new plan. I know how it works. We won't get anything that we actually need to expand. The last thing I'd like to say is please do not sign any exclusive agreements. The one thing that I can say is that between the Asphalt Cowboys and Reading Rodeo, we could put a group together that could develop that entire parcel, turn it into something really nice, indoor arena, covered arena. There are a lot of things that we could do. So I'm saying, please open this up to a little competition if you don't mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Before the next speaker, I'd like to just ask one question, and I'm not sure who the best can answer it. In a perfect world, you'd like parking 365 days a year. But given that there's an alternate use for the convention center, does anybody from the Rodeo Grounds have a rodeo association? Can they tell me what they think would be a reasonable increase in the parking usage from what they have now?
Well, can we, if you can go back up there, or we just have the next speaker adjust. What we try to do is have people recognize at the podium and a dialogue rather than having people shout from the audience.
That way it's recorded too.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, I'll take 5 minutes or 2 minutes to tell you about that.
If Mr. Dunlap doesn't mind.
Do you mind?
Yeah, I don't want him up here.
No.
I've studied this a lot. Being an engineer, I'm very curious, and so I looked at the parking. I had the parking as my first committee. John Baum was the one that appointed me to that. Anyway, the parking sucks. It's terrible. We need mass transit to get in there. I've asked for quite a few years to try and work that out. It never worked out. You guys finally got an overpass that would make that possible. We still don't have any busing down there. The parking needs to be about double where we are. But one of the biggest concerns, if you've ever been there, matter of fact, if you come to the next rodeo, find me, I'll be in the back and I can give you a tour of the back. The back is where it's almost most important. We bring in some of these horse trailers that are as big as semis, and we have a big rodeo. We have 300 and something, 400 and something contestants. Where do we park those guys? And every year we're being encroached on, little piece by little piece. If you saw those maps, our area kept getting smaller and smaller. And most recently, you built a road right across one of the sections on the north side of our property that limits how many horse trailers we can have. And if you saw any of the things going on there, horse trailers were parked everywhere, even across the highway. So to answer your question, we need a lot more parking. And our eventual goal was something like a 7,500 person Rodeo Grounds would facilitate about 10,000 people in a concert. You definitely need mass transit, and you definitely need to find a way to get some more parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunlap, follow.
Sir, you haven't answered the question. All right, I'm sorry, but what I want to know is Mr. DeQuisto, is you have a rodeo. It's a big one. I get that. I've been to it. I loved it. But could you have a second one? How many more events could you do if you had the parking? And I'm not saying adding double the parking. I'm just saying working it out with the other people, the players there, to say, okay, we'd like to schedule 15 events instead of 4. Okay. That's the question, is how many more do you think you could do?
Well, we've looked at that a lot. And by the way, we also offer our arena to anyone that wants to come rent it at a minimal charge. We even offer it to the convention center to book it if they'd like. Okay? It's not been taken up other than a few little events here and there. But, okay, to answer your question, we used to put on an annual concert, big one. We did Reba McEntire one time. We put on bull rides in the fall. We put on the CCO PRA finals. There are a number of events. We could put on some big barrel races if we had enough room to park them all. Some of the big barrel races, they'll have 400 girls show up. So to answer your question, we could book the heck out of it. One of the problems, as you know, with your convention center, it seats, 1,900 people with decent seats. You can't book anyone worth a darn for 1,900 seats. You really need 5,000, 6,000 seats or so to be able to book anyone. And if we had that kind of capability, we could book all kinds of things. And we're willing to. Our crowd is willing to work however hard it takes to make these things happen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now? Yes, Mr. Dunlap, followed by Jesse Roos.
Thank you. No questions, please. You know, I draw a contrast tonight, remembering that this council authorized the spending of $4.7 million to put new turf out at the soccer park. $4.7 million for the soccer park. When I draw the contrast to the cultural history of this rodeo compared to what's out the soccer park, I have a hard time reconciling that. The rodeo ground is a space, but there's organizations, over 200 people, I'm sure, that are active in this town the entire time. If you stick around here, you'll see a lot of things happen over and over again. The proposal was to put a hotel back on the north side of where the rodeo grounds were, and the city undertook a chance to move that, and somebody else wanted to incorporate something with it. And we were involved in looking for a space to put a rodeo ground. Now, when you pick that, that's tough, because if whatever they do, they got flies, they got horses, they're late at night with a lot of noise, with lights. Looking around this community where you're going to put something like that is mighty, mighty tough. So the fact is that it represents a lot more. This is a cultural heritage of this town to be located in that position. They put on a parade. They've got the breakfast, their barbecue thing when they sell that. But those people are engaged in this community. You're going to have 200 people that have spiritually bonded to this town. And you're not going to find a place. We looked long and hard to put a rodeo ground that people can drive up whatever times of year. The second thing is, don't underestimate the value of open space. Let's say what you're going to put down there and how you compare it to a space that has intense use and then no intense use. So we're not just talking about economic development here. We're talking about a cultural thing that has belonged to Reading for a long, long time. Those of us who've been here can go on for hours of the time we spend out there. So I don't think this is the major point, but I am actually contrasted terribly about $4.7 million going into turf on a park out there, that grandstand was coming apart. So I took John Baum and a couple of guys out there and I said, look what you guys got out here. Within a year, they had that grandstanding out there, but $500,000 or better. Did not come to the city one time to ask for that money. So you got a bunch of concentrated guys here. They've shown up out here. They're a cultural, beyond an icon to this community. And when you move them, you're going to create problems everywhere you go. I think that should be taken off the board right away. One quick point on the main presentation. We didn't see anything showing which property out there is restricted and not restricted, or potentially restricted, or identifying those things where agreements are that have to be moved. I think this should be a presentation out here showing us that. We have no idea. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker after Jesse is Ginkgo Shabaram.
Chumisundwi, Ilagatage, Chi Jesse, is Omawi, Wintu Hupa. Hello, my name is Jesse, and I'm here today to speak a lot about the land itself. You know, they talk about the wild birds and, you know, our salmon and our river. That land, you know, it feels good to be here to see all the cowboys. You know, the Rodeo Grounds is very important. Since, you know, before time, the Indians were here, the cowboys were here, and now we all coexist. For me, as a young generation, growing up learning about my culture, I am a basket maker. You know, there's a handful of us left, and those rivers is what I gather on. You know, those rivers is what we fish. Those rivers are where we swim. That riverland is where my ancestors are buried. I think that our public lands should stay in public hands. You know, this land has been here a long time. And you guys, you big developers come in and you guys want to make way and progression. That's understandable. But to all of the cowboys in here, you know, this land is as important to them as it is to us, the indigenous people. And we want our lands to remain the way that they are. And that's all I have to say.
Hi, my name is Ginkgo. I'm very new to this, so here we go. I'm speaking today as someone who has been in Reading for the last 16 years and will probably be here for a while longer. I'm a very confused, concerned citizen hearing about this riverfront master plan. My concerns focus on the environmental, fiscal, and ideological implications in selling this property. For the last couple of years, it's felt like the city has made a lot of decisions without the consent of the community and have instead catered to the money and desires of Bethel or to create an empty persona in failed attempts to increase tourism. If we do get some fancy new buildings by the river, it feels like the only people who would be able to afford them would be Bethel. The vacant shops down the New Market Street should serve as a warning. They weren't built for us to foster local business. There is no revitalization without redistribution. Give the community the money and the resources to grow and take care of each other, not big churches or companies that want to use our beautiful location for their own agenda. This poorly developed, poorly explained farce of a plan feels dangerous and ignorant of the true impact it will have on the local ecosystem and people. I'm going to be impacted by this, not the companies taking our money, not the church members who will inevitably leave when they suck us dry or find a better spot, and not the older generation who get excited by the elitist notion of cleaning up the city. We're ignoring parts of our community for the sake of modernizing buildings and making us look like something we're not. We're not a fancy city, and we should not be a religious epicenter. We're a weird spot in NorCal with a lot of prejudice and hiking trails. We owe it to our younger folks, to the burnt and struggling ecosystem, and to our neighbors, unhoused and housed, to either leave the land as is, or better yet, give it back to its original stewards. We need to grow as a people, not an infrastructure. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Margie Cantrell, followed by David Ledger, and followed by Nick Gardner.
Council members, audience, I'm Margie Cantrell. My parents moved me here 75 years ago. Came and left to college and different jobs as my husband progressed through different lives and always ended back in Shasta County or Reading. We are through 4 generations, and I personally knew Frances Koutras, her son, both daughters-in-law, and both of her grandchildren. I want you to know that when Frances Koutras deeded this property, it was for the use of the people of the city of Reading. I'm not hearing a lot from city council, especially Mrs. Winters, that you recognize the fact that the people of the city of Reading, not multi-million-dollar corporations or their partners who have the ability to get state grants to build improvements and deny people the right to property that those of us who are citizens here for years or even recently own. It is something that you are the custodians for us temporarily while you're in office. This is something that needs to be saved for not only my generation and my children and my great-grandchildren and my grandchildren. It is something for all of these people and their generations to come. We do not want to limit the ability to have this property accessed by the citizens of the city of Reading or Shasta County or tourists. And so as you think of this, the city of Reading has grant writers. They can get money from the state or the feds, and they can do whatever needs to be done down there. It doesn't need to be done by large corporations or partnerships or developers. I want you to save this property, not only for my use in the future. That's not the Turtle Bay boat ramp, by the way. That's the Posse Grounds boat ramp that my husband and I used with the Mackenzie River boat when it first opened down there. So think this through. It is something that we want you to be aware of. The people of the city own this property, and they should have a great say in keeping development out of it.
Good evening, council members. I'd like to commend Julie Winter on one thing. Is she sent me an email and asked if I would walk the river trail with her and tell her the important parts that I saw there, and I told her about all the important plants. We saw a large salmon in an area where the bird sanctuary is that was building a red, and it was a huge one, and it was really kind of fun. And then when we walked around where we were looking for the eagle's nest, you couldn't see it, but 2 deer came out of the woods. They kind of swam a bit across a little pond, and then they jumped up onto the water and got onto the land. So I do commend her for taking the time to consider our importance, the importance of the environment. That I'm with Shasta Environmental Alliance, and so we're concerned about the riparian areas, and especially all of the bird sanctuary, all of the undeveloped areas. And I want to point out the community development and design element of the 2000 General Plan. Protect and enhance the relationship between the city and the Sacramento River. And the plan states, continue acquisition of key lands along the river and other areas, waterways to provide passive, non-motorized public access and to preserve important ecological values and sensitive habitats. This may be accomplished by a combination of public and private land purchases, donations, dedications, and granting of public easements, etc. And so we're kind of doing the opposite here. But the main part, we're just concerned about the riparian areas. But when I hear some of the promotion from Populous, first of all, having a restaurant over the river is going to really destroy a part of the river. Also, parts of the plan they had in the packet, the 70-page booklet they sent to you, was one of the things they have is they envision zip lines, beer gardens, and dog parks are just a few examples of the active elements we will bring to the site to draw people to the river's edge, creating a constant level of activity to build a sustainable community. He also puts down floating boardwalks and viewing platforms. And this is just throwing out the importance of what the general plan says about having that area for the environment. And I'm a little concerned about Mr. Tippin. I really respect his intelligence, but he was a little vague on what could happen to the land that is not sold. And I just see mission creep with all of these projects of restaurants over there where the Turtle Bay property is, and we'll just do it for 20 years. I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about mission creep as far as damage to the environment. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to say I've got my Oki teleprompter here again. It looks to me like, actually, I was all for this project until I heard the Cowboys here, and they are an icon, more than an icon, and they deserve one heck of a lot more than what they're being given, in my opinion. They need to stay there. They need to be on negotiations, and they've done a hell of a good job. What concerns me is the way that Turtle Bay and McConnell Foundation has been poaching and taking pieces of this area down there piece by piece at just about the cost of little to nothing. The lease for Turtle Bay is 2 55-year back-to-back leases, and the rent is the improvements they put on it. And it seems like most of those improvements were put on by grants. And then you look at the 201 acres that Mike Warren-led City of Reading gave to the McConnell Foundation, and the money that was paid went into their glass bridge that they built. Then you take a look at the Sheraton Hotel and how that played out. And I wanted to thank Mark Mazzano for getting that gal from Turtle Bay up here to speak on that. And something caught my ear when she was speaking. When she was asked what they brought to the table, it was, the Turtle Bay, the Cultural Center, and the Sheraton Hotel. Well, it was put on the ballot, the property for the Sheraton Hotel, misleadingly. They convinced the taxpayers to sell that to the McConnell Foundation, and the McConnell Foundation built the Sheraton Hotel, and I thought they owned it, but she referred to it as their hotel. So I did a little investigating, and I would like her to come up and explain to us why she calls it her hotel. Does the McConnell own it, or does Turtle Bay own it? Does Turtle Bay have a lease from the McConnell on the Sheraton Hotel? Is there possibly a different entity that they've leased it to for next to nothing and given the profits to Turtle Bay? Maybe even there's a nonprofit or, a for-profit entity tied to Turtle Bay that got a lease from the McConnells for next to nothing. It's just backroom dealing, and it could be the deals that come across from McConnell and Turtle Bay and the city of Reading reminds me of the song Dirty Deeds, and they're done dirt cheap. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tom, starts with SP. Spade, okay. And followed by Lorraine Lindsay.
Hi. I've got a little history here in Reading. In 1947, I had a fort in the Monolith building right after they quit using it. I was a little bit young, but I was watching it then. I've been on the Planning Commission. I was on the committee to build this facility that we're standing in. I've been in the Asphalt Cowboys for 44 years. So I got a pretty good idea what this is all about. I want to say one thing, and I want to get through it, and I'm not sure I can because I'm a little emotional about it. The Asphalt Cowboys and the Red Shirts every year put on the Handicapped Kids event. We bring about 250 mentally and physically handicapped kids down there. We put them all on horses. We put them on chuck wagons. We take them for rides. We bring in clowns. We have an event that is worth more than anything the McConnell Foundation can ever build down here. You should come. You should see it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Lindsay. I am a local Win2, and I just want to say, this is our land here, and I just don't want it to be disturbed more than what it already is. And our ancestors just don't need to be disturbed, and by building, and it just doesn't need to go on. And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. That was our last speaker for item 3. Mr. Tippin, do you have any? Our next item is item 4, and I'll read the item. It's a presentation of the unsolicited proposal received to master plan and develop land around the Civic Auditorium. And then we are also scheduled to have public comment after this item, after this presentation.
Good evening, City Council members, city staff, and community members. Welcome to those of you who are here for the first time and to those of you who are returning to the 3rd Community Workshop. I want to thank the city for providing these workshops so we can understand how a strong public-private partnership can come to fruition. Big ideas generate lots of questions, and sometimes not with all of the answers immediately. They also elicit hopes and fears. Here are some of the things we're hoping to achieve through our offer. Our proposal team is made up of Populous, K2 Development Companies, Turtle Bay Exploration Park, and the McConnell Foundation. How we came together to work together to facilitate a master plan for the future of this civic area was really very simple. We realized we each were thinking, is there a future for this area that is untapped and undeveloped that the community has an interest in? Visioning together will be the single most important key to this process. We've engaged in early participation with the operators at the Civic area. Turtle Bay Exploration Park is a 6,000 household member organization in our community. Advance Reading manages the Reading Civic Auditorium and hosts about 60 events annually. We're all familiar with the Reading Rodeo Association and the Asphalt Cowboys. We love them, we support them, and we attend their events. In addition, what's going to be so important and is wonderful to see tonight and in the previous workshops is participation from all aspects of the community. We want to hear from all parties and all people who have history and interest in the Northern Riverfront. They're going to be invited, consulted, and included in a community engagement process if this project moves forward. Community input will drive the design, development, and preservation of this area. What's involved? Eventually, this area effort will require some land commitment by the City of Reading. It's way too early to know what that entails. It will empower our partnership ultimately to seek federal, state, and private funding resources and to help make the best project we can for the city. What safeguards will be in place is important to note. Public lands will only transfer if a master plan and demonstrated ability to develop the site are approved by city planning processes and the Reading City Council, not without those safeguards. A successful master plan must be more than a plan. Our team is offering to design, fund, and construct the community's vision. It's a blank slate at this point in time. The effort is bigger than any one of us, which is why we have partnered together. We believe bringing the local commitment and the global experience of Populous to our team and to our community will help us create and deliver a master plan that reflects Reading's vision for Reading. Ideas that are being shared by our team are only to demonstrate examples of experiences in other communities. We may use none of them, a few of them, some of them, or other ideas that are generated by our community. It will likely take a decade to transform this area with city approval every step of the way. It's not an overnight effort, it's an overtime effort. The partners presenting this offer to the City of Reading and the community are rooted in Reading, and we are committed to the significant responsibility we are offering to undertake. Now I'd like to invite Michael Lockwood, my colleague, up.
Thank you, Shannon. Council members, great to see you again. City staff, thank you for that history lesson. I think it was fantastic to see what the site has been through the years and really helpful to frame the conversation. My name is Michael Lockwood. I'm a senior principal with Populous Architects. And I was born in Reading. I was raised in Reading. I went to elementary school at Grace Baptist Elementary. I went to Nova High School. I was the last class at Nova. I went to Shasta High School. And I went to Shasta College. Lon McCaslin, great to see you again, Coach. Wherever you are, I can't see you. He was my high school football coach. And I say that because it matters. It matters where you're from. It matters what you care about. And it matters because it puts everything that we try to do in life in perspective. I think it's fantastic to hear from you all tonight. This is not easy. This is not an easy process. The projects that I'm able to work on around the world are incredibly complicated. And I've been in rooms like this before. The projects are only better because of conversations like this. So I want to let you know that we're listening. I'm listening as a Reading native, and I'm listening as a professional as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our profession. But we've had a chance to talk with a few of you, the Reading Rodeo Association, the Asphalt Cowboys. This is the team that I've brought so far. Amber Luther, who I brought to the first meeting when we were focusing on some planning processes. Ricky Nishimura was here last time. He's a strategist when we talked about the strategic plan, general plan, master plan, and the differences among those. And then Todd Gralla in the bottom middle there, who we had a conversation with the Reading Rodeo Association and the Asphalt Cowboys. He's our fairgrounds and equestrian specialist. That's all he focuses on from a master planning and design point of view. And in that conversation, we heard a lot of great input from you guys, and we appreciate that. Todd has been texting and calling me almost every day since that meeting. He is so excited about the opportunity in Reading, and this site specifically, and how to transform and improve the venue to do much better and greater things. Every conversation that we've had about this project, every person we've spoken with, Julie Dyer with Advanced Reading and the Civic Center, the Turtle Bay, Reading Rodeo Association, everybody wants this place to be better, and that's exactly what we want it to be as well. So I just want to put that out there that we're listening. This is a process that we're going through. This is the forum for hearing you guys, and we're listening and responding every chance that we get. So I mentioned a little bit about me. I want to talk about Populous. I'm a co-owner of this company. We're a global company. It was pointed out to me earlier in the night that our website might look intimidating to some. It may not looks like it applies to a place like Reading, but that is not true. We do amazing projects all around the world in communities of all sizes. And I'm here because I'm from Reading. I care deeply about this community, and I feel excited about bringing my company's expertise to this place and time in this moment to embrace this opportunity. It's a special thing we do, looking at communities and improving how people gather together. That's what we're all about. It doesn't have to be a building. It doesn't have to be a venue. It doesn't have to be an enclosed place. It has to be a place for the community to come together. And that's what we're always going to put first and foremost in our process. We've not started the process yet, so this is just me telling you what it is we do and how we go about our work. We have worked all around the world. We've worked for some of the most complicated organizations and communities that you can imagine. It is fun work, but it is a work that we must be committed to over time. This takes a long time to get this right, and we understand that. Nobody's going to get it right out of the gate, and it requires this conversation to shape our process and our response until we get it right to produce a content that everybody loves and believes in and gets behind. I've used these projects. You may have seen these. We design these projects around the world in very complicated locations, but we're always looking for those magical moments. So no, this site is not going to have a Major League Baseball stadium. It's not going to have a huge a building. We don't think that's the right thing to do right out of the gate. It's going to be what's right for this community and this place. But I use this as an example to show you the magic that exists between a Major League Baseball game and the environment, and preserving public access to these venues and these places and these cities. This building, you can circulate around 360 degrees. The public has access to all sides of it. They can look into the baseball game without a ticket. And we created this moment where you can actually hit a home run into the water, which these are the things people remember. These are the moments that people come around together and say, hey, you remember when we did that? I was there for that moment. And that's what we're going to look for on this site, is these very special moments. It doesn't need to be a big thing. It just needs to be an important thing. I focus on convention center planning and design. The Civic Center is something that I've paid special attention to. It's been great to tour the facility and understand how much more they want to do on the site, how many more events they would like to program, events out in the open space as well, and concerts and things like that. This is a project in Sydney, Australia, where I led the design of a massive project, over 2 million square feet, very complicated as well, and in a place in the busiest public space in Australia. Everybody had such a high attention to what this building, or how this building would integrate within the community. And what we did is we designed a facility that actually embraced the community and let people come to it, literally walk over the top of it. We connected neighborhoods over the top of the building that previously didn't have access to the city of Sydney. People were able to move through public areas of the building and get connected to restaurants and elements of the city that they had not been before. So again, when you prioritize the community and the community engagement in the facility, we believe you design a better experience, and that's what our company is all about. It's been asked of us where this started. And a few years ago, Alan, who's going to speak in a moment here, invited me to town. He started to get involved in larger, more complicated projects downtown, and I offered to come and help him think bigger about what can happen in Reading. And as we were focusing on the downtown area, the designers that I brought to the workshop, everybody wanted to go down to the Civic and see the bridge and walk around. And everybody that saw the site thought that it was underutilized. It can be so much more. I think we've heard from every organization, we would like to have more events, we would like to do more things. And my quick observation of the site is the buildings and the site planning, they're working against each other. And once we start to get them to work together, I think everybody will be better because of it. Every organization that uses the site can be better, and we don't have to sacrifice public open space to do that. I genuinely believe that we can do it all. It's a matter of us all coming together and having a conversation. I am a designer. I believe in the power of design to listen and bring people together to chart a course for our future together. And that's the way that we can get out of this site at what everybody wants. And that is our job to do. And it's not an easy one. It's very complicated. But we've reimagined Reading. We believe so deeply in it. And my family is here. I'm from here. I bring my family here constantly. And so I care deeply about this place. So I would never do anything that would be out of alignment with what Reading can be into the future. So with that, I would like to invite Alan out to come up. And we're going to share a couple slides here because we have some questions that we want to address from the last workshop.
Yeah. Good evening, council. Good evening, members. Good evening, Asphalt Cowboys. Good evening, all members of the community. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm Alan Knott, CEO of K2 Development Companies, and I thought I'd just come up here and just talk briefly, because I haven't spoken at either of the other two workshops other than getting called up here, and talk a little bit about K2 and why we're here and why we're part of this project. I've been asked a couple times, how did Populous get to the table? What backdoor deal happened to get Populous here? And I said, it's even worse than that. We probably made this deal in a 1984 Ford pickup truck driving to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo when we left Reading in 1996. Mike and I were college roommates. I know everything about this guy from toga parties all the way up to where he's at today. And there is an advantage of quality sheets, let me tell you right now. But I will tell you that we spent our entire life. I went off to college with Mike. I moved to Ohio. Mike moved to Kansas City, Missouri. We would fly back with our friends, mine from Ohio at the time, his from Kansas City, Missouri. When I moved back to California, we'd bring our friends up to Reading, California. When we were in college, we'd do the same. The only negotiation I won with my wife is that she'd move to Reading someday with me. So we're here, and we love this community, big time. So we've invested the last 8 years in downtown Reading. My brother's my business partner, Daniel Knott. Some of you met him. It's interesting to go through this journey, especially listening to everyone talk. It's almost like our office. Daniel and I negotiate for 3 hours, and at the very end we say, I think we're saying the exact same thing. And I think this is one of those projects that we all have an aligned vision as community members. So I do want to just throw that out there. As we go forward, this is a very complicated process. Normally, we buy a piece of land. We come to Planning Commission. We come to the city, and we say, here's what we're building. It's very straightforward. This is a much different endeavor as we look about what this process looks like. So I've been asked a few questions. Are you going to buy it? Are you going to lease it? Or do you need to take it all down? I don't know. I don't know until we get the master plan done what properties will ever transfer from the city to private development, what assets would stay in the city's hands and be leased to an operator, what land would actually be redeveloped in current form to something better, and what assets might be privatized because it makes sense on the site. So I want to bring that up because our original RFP, the proposal that we made to the city was that listed all the APN numbers, and there's some confusion there. The reason why it's all APN numbers is because we need to be good to the neighbors. You don't take a project site like this and not master plan all areas around it. You got to understand how this impacts Garden Track, how this impacts the natural habitat, how it impacts the freeway system, how it impacts the existing occupants of the property. So we listed all the APN numbers because we didn't want any of those property owners or occupants to feel left out of this process, because we want you to know that you're part of this process. So we don't know what the final outcome is, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable for you, and why it's a little uncomfortable for us going into this as well, because we're signing up for a journey for the next 10 years that we're going to plan together. No offense to the city, but we'll get this done 10 times faster and 10 times better. And it'll be your vision that we'll get it done faster and better. And we'll need the city support because it takes a very strong city council, a very strong city staff to knock something like this out. Downtown, we're at about $140 million, start out at 24. A project like this is gonna probably approach $500 million. A parking garage that we built downtown's $15 million. A parking facility for a project that would house 5,000 people would take about 37 acres if you just parked it outright. So there's gonna be a lot of work that we're gonna have to go through as a team to solve things like ingress and egress, to solve parking, to solve these big items before we can ever even figure out how we're gonna solve the solution for all the current folks that are on the site now and how to make their experiences better, their facilities better, so you can be proud of it. So I wanted to throw that out there. The process is gonna take 10 years, as Shannon said. It's a different process than a typical land negotiation. The process that we've put forward, first and foremost, we would need some site control to start putting the risk capital up for the project. Once the site control happens, which would just be a negotiation agreement, we actually don't even buy the property at that point. We would then go through a series of community workshops that you'd all be at the table with us. We'd be drawing live together. Once we've all decided what we like on that site, we'll start running it through a financial risk model. We'll start going out and raising the capital to figure out how we're going to build the assets that have been designed on the site. And at that point, it would be presented back to the city council for acceptance. And at that point, you'd probably all be up here with us saying that's exactly what we envisioned down there. At least the folks that were part of the process, that they were all heard at least as part of the process, and they got their vision developed in the plan. At that point, that's when the purchase-sell agreement would happen. And there would, just like any purchase-sell agreement, there'd be all kinds of contingencies and covenants that'd be attached to that agreement through a development agreement that would restrict the ultimate development to match what was in that master plan. So that right there, as we put up on the board, probably would not happen until 2024 before a real estate transaction would occur. And at that point, we'd have ironed out which parcels lease, which parcels sell, which parcels never move. We have a few years to iron out those details before a land transaction would ever happen. So this is not a decision to sell the property today. This is a decision to enter into a master planning agreement that ultimately would give us the ability to develop the property if we align with the vision that would go on the site. People have asked, have we actually drawn pictures of what are going to be put down there? The answer is no, we haven't. We have all kinds of bourbon conversations about great ideas and outlandish ideas that we've come up with, but they're just ideas right now. We haven't had a chance to actually sit down and start sketching and drawing and checking the financial feasibility of each of the items that we would design. Our gut reaction is 80% of the assets will be community facing. Things like the bettering the rodeo grounds, bettering the civic or rebuilding a better facility there, better open space, enhancing the river if there's grants that are available to do that. Those are the things we spend most of the time talking about. The privatization of assets are going to be very minimal on a site like this. The last question I want to bring up is affordable housing. So the state handed us a great thing with Surplus Land Act. They said that in 2019, that if to go through any type of sale of a city-owned parcel, you have to go through the Surplus Land Act. And it was the state's goal to have cities pledge property forward that can then be built for affordable housing. Our community doesn't have that problem like some of the bigger cities. We have plenty of property where affordable housing makes sense. We understand that. We build affordable housing in this community. This is not the project site that's slated for affordable housing. A developer, knock on wood, is probably not going to come in here in the next 60 days to make an unsolicited offer, or in that case, a solicited offer through the Surplus Land Act to purchase this property for affordable housing. The infrastructure alone for that type of project would probably run $100 million. By the time you solved all the ingress and egress needs and all the parking needs for a project like that. So I highly doubt it happens. I can't guarantee it's not going to happen, but the city would also have off-ramps at that point because the offer would have to come in fully baked, ready to build, and affordable housing takes years to get off the ground through multiple capital stacks and funding sources. So I did want to lay that out as well, that this is not slated to be an affordable housing project. We're not even sure if housing is going to go down there. That'll also be something we'll need to study as part of this master plan. With that being said, I'm here to answer questions along with Mike. Thank you, City Council, and thank you, members of the audience.
Do we have any questions from the council? Councilmember Winter.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a question for you guys. So just listening to the Asphalt Cowboys, and thank you all the rodeo people for being here and expressing your opinion. The rodeo is obviously very valuable to this community, and we also have lots of events, community events at the Civic, over 60 events. We have people have expressed the need to preserve the beautiful riparian areas and make sure that we protect the birds and the wildlife and keep those things safe. So my question to you, as you think about this, it feels like in the room people are thinking like mutually exclusive, like if we do this, then we can't do this. I'm just wanting to know if you're, and then you have the parking issue. If AR is using parking, then the rodeo grounds can't have parking. It feels to me like there needs to be like a single multi-use facility that could be used for everything, and that we could. I'm just thinking that these things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. I just want to get your opinion on that idea. That how do we combine the needs in the room for the community?
Yeah, so and I'll walk you through the master planning process because it is the fun part of everything. Because we come together and everybody gets to say what they want and what they need. And we do categorize it in that way. I need this, and you've heard from the Reading Rodeo Association, we need these things. We also want these things. And it's important to actually take the time to hear those and understand those. When you have multiple stakeholders on a given site, when you start to listen to everybody, and I think you've heard it tonight, lots of people actually want the same thing, including us. We want this site to be active more often. We want people to have access to it. We want it to be diverse. We want to have all kinds of things going on. That is the planning process, to first listen to everybody, then for us to come back and generate a site program. These are the types of things everybody's asking for. These are the sizes of those things. So a feasibility consultant can come in and say, you might have a 10,000 person rodeo arena. You might have a 5,000 person concert venue. We don't know what those things are yet. They would need to be proven out through economic feasibility. So then we put a menu of program options on the table. Then we start to draw. Then we start the planning process. See what fits, where it might go, and see what doesn't fit. If something doesn't fit, or if it doesn't make sense, or if it takes up too much open space, it goes away. So this is the fun part for me. Lots of workshops, lots of activities. In our first workshop, we just went through this in Wichita, developing their riverfront. We would have 800-person workshops. This is a small crowd considering, and it's an engaging workshop where we're literally drawing on tables together, and people putting up Post-it notes and talking and saying, I'd love this and I would want that. And it's been our experience, it's been my experience in my entire career, that we can satisfy everybody. When everybody hears the same story and we draw the plan and it starts to make sense, we're not going to get it right the first time. We're going to draw it again and again and again and again and again until it's right, until everybody loves it. Then we go build it. And so I believe there is opportunity for everything to work together. This has been my just brief history meeting with these organizations. You have organizations that are trying to do things, and you have the site that's trying to do things. You have two levels of conflict. We think the process can actually satisfy that. We all get in the same room. We talk about an event schedule. We will look at a 365-day-a-year calendar. Who wants to do what when? Cool April Nights, 4th of July, the rodeo, all the things that need to stay here. How do we work around those things, and how do we actually add more events to the site? That's the planning process. It's complicated. It's not just facilities. It's time, it's open space, it's temporary venues. I think I mentioned that we plan the Super Bowl every year for the NFL, and guess what? It moves cities every year. Temporary venues are a massive part of our business. We have to work with events to host a festival and things like that. So we need open space. We need to preserve the riverfront for the public. We need great public realm space so that we can actually bring more events to the site. So open space is a huge aspect of the programming process.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you for your presentation. Okay, we have public speakers. How about if we start with Cameron Middleton, followed by Rebecca Ladron de, oh, I'm sorry, I mispronounced. Guarvo. Great. I apologize. We all know, sometimes it's difficult to read handwriting too.
Mine's
but not
awful.
Cameron, but not Cameron.
Mine's awful. So thank you, council, very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. And I did want to thank you as well on behalf of the Asphalt Cowboys for holding these workshops and allowing for us and the community to be able to speak on this particular proposal. You know what the Asphalt Cowboys do, especially throughout Rodeo Week. We start off with a top hand dinner, put on a golf tournament, let's see, we've got our Special Needs Kids Day. We have our chili cook-off, our quick draw contest. We have a mock bank robbery with a lone stranger and sidekick. And then we go on to the pancake breakfast, which is the largest attended event in the county. We then put on, after that's over on Friday, we get up on Saturday morning and put on one of the biggest parades in Northern California. We do all of that in 2 weeks' time. What you often don't see, I mean, we do also have our barbecue, our annual barbecue that we put on each year in the park, in Lake Redding Park. This year we did, I think, just over 7,200 dinners in about 7 hours, felt like 20. But what you don't see is a lot of what we do elsewhere in the community, the small events that are put on and hosted by other small nonprofits, schools, other entities, and we show up and help at those events, help them cook, help them put that on. We're often around behind the building where you don't see us. And we do a lot of those things throughout the community, throughout the year. The other part of this, too, I think, for the Asphalt Cowboys and what's so important to us, this being our home, is being centrally located. Being in this particular location is critical for the operations that we do and the amount that we put on, especially in the 2-week period that is Rodeo Week. Having that central location being as critical as it is, we are, of course, concerned about movement and whether or not we will be able to stay in that particular location throughout this process. We want to see improvements. We want to see improvements to that area. We've done the improvements. We've made all of them to our facility and our storage. Those were all built by the Cowboys. That was done over many years, added on to additions, things added throughout the years at our expense and with our effort. We're also an all-volunteer organization, self-sustaining as well. We want to see these issues addressed, as people have brought up, regarding parking, circulation, not only land use, but operations as well. And as you brought up, Councilwoman Winter, regarding parking facilities and how that works. We do have our street dance, chili cook-off, quick draw contest, and other events down at that location. And so that is something that we want to be fundamentally involved with as well. We've had some time now to look at the LOI, look at the proposal, be able to speak with the applicants, with the proponents, and have some conversations with them. And I think I speak for all of us in that we appreciate that they have invited us to give input. Unfortunately, as we all know, input can and unfortunately will be disregarded at different times. And what we're looking for is something more. And I speak on behalf of the Asphalt Cowboys and the Redding Rodeo Association when I say we feel in this process that we are not full partners. And we have asked to be partners of the applicants and have been told essentially that we are not full partners, that we are simply there to give some extra input. And while that may sound fantastic, that we're there to be able to give input on the process, we're looking for something a little bit more concrete. And that's what we're asking of you from the City Council, is that we're able to get something a bit more concrete. This concept of, hey, we need to control the land first, and then we will begin the planning process, and then even go to a purchase or sale agreement. Unfortunately, with an exclusive negotiating agreement, we really won't even be able to talk to you. We won't be able to express to the city, to negotiate with the city, our ongoing lease, our current lease, our ideas, specific ideas with regards to the facilities, what we need, what we'll be able to put forth, and also the resources we can bring to the table, which actually can be quite substantial. We really feel that we are able to do this, we're able to move forward, and while we have not been able to get those guarantees from the applicants, we are looking for those from the city. I love how Michael Lockwood put it. I'm also a Reading native, born and raised here. My family's been here since 1874. But I love how he put on there that Populous is the place they design, the places where people love to come together. Asphalt Cowboys and the Reading Rodeo Association, we are the ones that do bring them together. Thank you.
Welcome, Rebecca. Will you pronounce your name for us?
Ladrón de Guevara.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
City Council members, I am Rebecca Ladrón de Guevara, President of Wintu Audubon Society. Wintu Audubon has approximately 450 members in Shasta County with an active board of directors and conservation committee advocating for the protection and restoration of natural ecosystems, focusing on birds, other wildlife, and habitat, including Turtle Bay Exploration Park and Turtle Bay Sanctuary. Wintu Audubon Society is very concerned about the proposal from Populous Inc. and the potential loss of riparian habitat west of Sundial Bridge it may bring. And we are also very concerned about the development's effect on wildlife and habitat in Turtle Bay Exploration Park and the Turtle Bay Sanctuary. On a personal level, this particular area is special to me, as this is where I decided to make the life-changing decision to move to Reading from downtown Los Angeles just a year ago. When I came to Reading for the first time for a job interview, I was told an offer would be made, and to go think long and hard if I wanted to come move to Reading. That afternoon, I went to Sundial Bridge and Turtle Bay Museum. I walked the grounds up and down, deciding my future. I have traveled the world some, and in this place, I quickly recognized the uniqueness of the city. It offered the beauty of nature and the unpaved like I had never experienced before. Nature had an unthreatened home here. As a birder, I couldn't ask for more. This breathtaking landscape with its vibrant wildlife made it easy for me to accept the job offer and move to Reading 2 weeks later. And I know I'm not the only one who sees the beauty of the city only because of its nature. The Turtle Bay area from Highway 44 upstream to and including the Rodeo Grounds is an iconic focal point of nature lands and wildlife habitat within the city. These include pristine riparian zones of immeasurable value to wildlife and to the quality of life of both city residents and the visiting public. The Turtle Bay Bird Sanctuary and the Sundial Bridge areas are habitats for the highest concentration of bird species in western Shasta County. Sundial Bridge has 155 species. Turtle Bay Bird Sanctuary, 189 different bird species. Development in the 45-acre study area west of Sundial Bridge at the scope conjectured by the Populous Letter of Intent will have a myriad of profound adverse effects on birds, wildlife, and habitat, both within the area of development and throughout the larger exploration park and bird sanctuary areas. Direct impacts to riparian zones, including but not limited to vegetation removal and new hardscapes, and indirect impacts due to increases in human intrusion of wildlife viewing, noise, traffic, runoff, and around-the-clock human activity levels would all be likely under the Populous proposal. The timeline included in the letter of intent.
Are you almost finished?
Yes. I'll skip to the last part. Wintu Audubon asserts that before the city can further consider the entering of a purchase-sale agreement, the California Environmental Quality Act scoping process must be undertaken by the city to define the scope of environmental review and the appropriate programmatic level of review.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Steve Cohn, followed by Ali Figuera.
Good evening. Some of what I was going to say has been touched upon, but I think the most important thing is with regards to the exclusive negotiating agreement. Populous and D&D would like to get that exclusive negotiating agreement right now without putting together yet a master plan, and maybe that's not possible due to the expense. But we have no idea what they really want to do. And making that agreement at this point will tie that property up, according to them, through 2024, without other people being able to give proposals or even get into a bidding situation to where we could maximize the amount of money that we could get out of the property. So at the very least, what I'd like to see is some obligations or some guarantees that certain things would be involved in the project. For example, the Rodeo Association. I think that they are core to this community, and I don't think that this project should or could go forward without it. I just don't think it should. And there are other things like the car show, which generate a lot of revenue, the boat ramp, and fireworks and other things, I would imagine. But I think at a very minimum, we should have a guarantee of some things being included in that before 3 members of the council vote to go into a exclusive negotiating agreement. And that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. After Ali, we'll have Jonathan Freeman.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Ali Figuera, community member and Reading resident. As you consider reusing this area, I suggest looking at other cities.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yes.
And maybe there's
May I start over? Or
yeah, please start.
Sure.
We can start over. Also, there's a step stool there too, if you feel more comfortable. Sure. But make sure you're speaking to the microphone.
Okay. Is this better? I can hear myself better now. Okay. Good evening. I'm Ali Figuera, community member and Reading resident. As you consider reusing this area, I suggest looking at other cities for ideas. Copenhagen, Denmark is famous for its bicycle and pedestrian friendliness, and it regularly competes as the #1 city in the world for livability, happiness, and quality of life in surveys. When my husband, our kids, then aged 8 and 11, and I visited Copenhagen in 2019, we were delighted by their harborfront area, a once rundown area that has been redeveloped with the ideas of bringing people to the area and connecting it to other parts of the city via easy walking and biking. I thought, this is what Reading needs to do with the Sacramento River downtown. They have boardwalks with elevation changes over the water, trampolines and play structures that seem to just appear in the middle of public spaces, and public buildings with interesting architecture. Pedestrians, bicyclists, and people of all ages were gathering, sitting, coming and going. I believe the harborfront area has an event center, library, and theater hall that also serve to draw people to the area. Any of those, and maybe a recreation center, could work well in Reading Center to draw our local community into the area to meet a friend for recreation, leisure, or entertainment before walking across the bridge or going to get some food to eat while overlooking the beautiful river. Regarding the rodeo grounds, I am a horse person. And I believe the redevelopment of the area should not result in the loss of a public equestrian facility. The current location may not be ideal for a horse facility due to space constraints. As we've heard, issues about parking, horses are large animals, throw horse trailers in there, and they take space. So this may not be a popular sentiment tonight, but I think it's worth considering relocating a equestrian area. If a larger modern equestrian facility could accommodate not just the rodeo, but with things like a larger warm-up arena, stalls, and turnout areas, it could support other activities and disciplines too. Despite the rural areas surrounding Reading, opportunities for equestrian activities are actually limited in Reading. Relocating and expanding rodeo grounds could support expanded equestrian opportunities in Reading. Horses are good for people, especially kids, especially teenage girls. The more disciplines we can create communities of, the more opportunities for our youth to engage with horses. Please treat this as a great opportunity for our community to support the growth of horsemanship for Reading's kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jonathan Freeman, followed by Rich Gerardo.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jonathan Freeman. Thank you for holding these workshops. I want to comment on that. It's really nice that we can hold these workshops because this is public land. So let's hold that here for a moment. You know, when I'm coming to these, you always think that you know what you're going to say, and then there's some other things that are said during the evening that inspire you. I really appreciate, you know, with the large turnout here from the Asphalt Cowboys and the folks from the rodeo, and to have our Native brothers and sisters here tonight too. It really brings a depth to this conversation, and I think as a Native person, that America has a lot to learn from us Native people. Even in terms of things like the Dawes Act, where in 1887, purposefully, the United States government basically divvied up the land of Native people to give them private ownership as a mechanism to destroy the community, to destroy community structure. And that's just, you know, I think as we're looking at this as a process, as a way that we're looking at moving our community together, for a place to bring each other together, this was a mechanism in the past that actually was used to separate. The other thing, when we were at the United Nations with the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, there's a very strong argument around the difference between consent and consultation. Because the government, the nation states only wanted consultation, but the Native people fought for consent. And that's the same thing I heard just a moment ago. Entering into an exclusive agreement eliminates the ability for consent. We need safeguards. And I think one of the things, I've been sitting at home not coming because this has been like the deadliest month of the entire pandemic. And we're forced to come here in person to comment, which, you know, when we're looking at the last 28 days, we've had 2,105 cases of COVID. There's a lot that builds, you know, talking about safeguards, the feeling of unsafety. These workshops, watching from afar, have not felt like a place where we're going to learn if we should do this. It's been a workshop series about how we should do this. It feels like this mechanism is greased to shoot, rather than having a very deep conversation about even if we should do this. The surplus property law wasn't set up for making giant venues. It was for affordable housing. And as we look at these different things that we talk about the Native people, as we talk about indigenous communities, one of the things that's in one of the amendments for the surplus property law is Assembly Bill 1180, which actually gives the rights to tribes for first refusal for surplus property. And in this time when we're looking at surplus property and the history of this land, Elpam, the Wintu name for this side, this was land that was not, that was signed in treaty so that the whole the east side of the river would be a reservation. And that treaty was never honored. So I appreciate tonight, I appreciate the deliberation, and thank you so much. Let's do this together. This is our land. Let's keep public lands in public hands. Thank you.
Rich? Gerardo.
I've been called worse. It's Gallardo.
Gallardo. Oh,
but that's
hey.
okay.
Looks
that's
like
okay. So I originally had 2 topics. So I'm going to add a third one for this gentleman. If you could just turn off the TV for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, the pandemic would go away. It would all but go away. and your stress level would be greatly reduced. So I would highly recommend that. So the two items I want to talk about is McConnell and public lands. Unless you're in the tea and crumpet crowd, in which McConnell is very snug with, and that includes this city council, that includes other government entities. If you're not in the tea and crumpet crowd, there's a lot of people that do not have a favorable look on McConnell. They've gotten too big and too powerful. They've gotten way too much money in public contracts, and they're gobbling up our land. And you guys are getting in bed with the devil. Sorry, my opinion. There's a lot of people who don't like McConnell. So, here's my suggestion, McConnell. If you want to be philanthropic, how about you publicly post all of your government contract money you've made since you've been in this county, from this county or city, and then how about you pledge 30% of that to go back into, if any, development on this land? You put 30% of that government contract money you've gotten over the decades back to the public, and we keep it in public hands. No ownership transfer. That's my second topic. Private land, they can make any kind of rules they want because it's private land. They can say, you don't get to have your firearm on this land. And that's what the law reads. So we might have all this open space, but if it's under private control, they can literally say, no weapons allowed. And we all know how weapons-free zones work out now, don't we? Because the criminals don't follow the law. So then people are going to come to these privately owned lands if the owner of the land just one day wakes up and is in bad mood, says, yep, sorry, no more items for self-defense. That's literally all it would take. So these lands need to remain in public land, public property, public control for the First Amendment, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom to protest, and freedom to protect yourself with any weapon that is legal and lawful. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandy McDaniels, followed by Radley Davis.
Hi, I got a text on the way here from one of my best friends that she has COVID, so I'm seriously endangering my life being here because it means that much to me, okay? So Chumi Samwi, I'm Brandy McDaniels, Madesi Band Cultural Rep for the Pitt River Nation. I and my people have been here since time immemorial, so I'm also local, right? Our symbol are 3 salmon. The salmon that are supposed to run that river right there. Those salmon have been cut off from their traditional spawning grounds due to the damming of the Pitt River. The Pitt River is the main arm of Shasa Lake, and when our waters are released from Shasta Dam and come right through this area we are talking about tonight, it is still the Pitt River, and its health is vital to the health and well-being of my people, salmon, and the ecosystem, and our ability to heal from historical trauma and acts of genocide against us. As a child, I remember swimming in this exact area and stepping over giant salmon who had run their course while other salmon jumped around us to get to their spawning grounds. We don't see that volume anymore. This decline has happened in my own lifetime. These fish are facing total extinction, and their habitat needs to be protected. I'm told there is data that supports that even the lights from the Sundial Bridge has an adverse impact on the salmon and surrounding ecosystem. Turtle Bay was supposed to be the world's first environmental theme park. Further development in this area is incongruent and incompatible with that mission. This is a known burial, habitat, and cultural resource area. This is an active cultural use area. Let's protect it. You cannot improve on nature. There is not enough space there to even consider this project. The parking and traffic is a known nightmare. If you want to designate this as surplus land, then do that and give it back to the Native Americans who are impacted by this and other developments on open water sources that continue to destroy the ecosystem. This is not the correct area for this period. Seisula Aya, thank you.
Thank you. Radley Davis, followed by Senator Johannesson.
Evening, Council. Evening, folks.
Could you make sure you speak clearly, or closer to the microphone, maybe?
Good evening. Is that better?
A little better.
All right. I could yell.
Okay.
I just want to, my name is Radley Davis. Sitting here listening I appreciated hearing about the Rodeo Grounds. I remember my grandma telling me she took my mom down there to a circus, and my mom seeing the elephant for the first time, and other stories about going down there, and myself going to the rodeos as a kid. Just really concerned about the bird sanctuary, the habitat in the area. Just really concerning about more develop in the area. It's more than enough developed. I agree with a lot of what's been said about what's doesn't need to be there any longer, and I also agree that keeping it in public hands seems to be pretty key. And also with these, what you're calling workshops, they do seem to be like they're more pro-led by the developers to tell us how this is going to be done. So it is my request that you extend community input, because there needs to be more community that needs to be aware of this project, that can offer you guidance about what is really needed here in Reading, and why public property is valuable to keep public, and but we're going to run out of time. So I don't know what the process is. A little bit different than like a CEQA process or some other environmental process or whatever. I myself am going to be trying to figure out what else I can do as a citizen of the area. But that's my request, is to request for an extension for comment period by the public, and allow the public to get more informed. And I'm in total agreement of protecting the remaining habitat in the area. I'm familiar with the whole area, even where across the river, just all around both sides of the river. But when they built where the old movie theater was, there's a lot of burials were dug up, a lot of human remains, but that whole river, the whole development along the river is where a lot of villages, Wintu villages, were. But it just needs to continue to be protected with what's there, and hopefully like Turtle Bay and McConnell Foundation, the other ones that I'm familiar with, that they should really consider their role in being part of this mega economic development that seems to have no real clear plan that's being described to us. It's just more of like, this is the possibilities of it. But keep it public. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tippin, can you elaborate a little bit on what, just because I think the timing is pretty good for you could share with some of the, maybe talk about some of the ideas going forward, how we would encourage public input?
Well, that's largely up to the council, but there's several options the council can have before them. Next Thursday is the last scheduled workshop. There'll be a brief summary that we'll present and then provide the council some opportunities to make decisions on the next steps. So next steps could be declare a surplus. Next steps could be do nothing. Next steps could say, well, master plan's a good idea, but we think we'll do it ourselves. Or the next steps could be, this is a big topic and we want to have 5 more workshops for the community to provide additional input. So there's many different avenues that the council can go from this point forward.
Okay, but we also have sometimes we can use the social media, or we can use our website to solicit input through surveys and.
Yeah, and we'll keep that up depending on what the council's desire is.
So there is a survey now.
Yeah, there's surveys out there. We are accepting comments always, and we're working on getting those comments posted up in like a similar FAQ manner, so that anybody that writes in a comment to the council, for instance, it will be posted, and so everybody can see what those comments are, so we can keep a flow of those comments going outside of this arena here. And there will be many more opportunities, regardless of which direction the council goes, with the exception of do nothing. All of the other avenues forward will require and have multiple opportunities for public comment.
Could you describe the how to access the survey?
Yeah, if you go to, the easiest way is just to go to the cityofreading.org website, and then at the top there's a banner and it talks about the surplus property process, and click on that. It'll take you to a specific website that has videos. It has, as I noted earlier, this presentation. It has links to these presentations, and has a lot of other information that you can browse through and get more information from it, including take the survey.
Okay, thank you. So everybody, we'd appreciate getting your feedback. Senator Johannesson, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
First thing I'd have to do is move that out of the way so I don't stumble on it. Anyway, I just, listening to this, I think there is somebody here that like they're looking for a job. And it's sort of interesting how they do that. There is nothing that we really have to look at. There is nothing meat on the bone. There is nothing here. There's something floating out there in the ether. Now, as some of you probably know, that I probably here sit anywhere I'd be here, sit what you were sitting there. I was a senator, a mayor here, and a chairman of the board here, and 9 years in the Senate, and I represented probably, I think it's something like 13 counties and 37 cities. I'm used to this. We built a lot of the stuff that you see around here. I built a lot of it, and I can tell you one thing. The thing that really got me thinking about this mess was that when I was told that the reason, first of all, I have the only privately owned property down there at this time, except for now the Channel 7, built after I did. I did my stuff down there. There was nothing but cobblestones down there, and I built down there when they told me this is nothing but Maurice's folly. Okay, maybe so. But the point that I want to tell you is that when I was told that the reason they took our property out of the planning was that they didn't want the public involved. What the hell are you talking about, a public involved? I talked to the city manager and I said, not a good plan, not a good plan. So I just wanted to tell you that I planned a lot. In fact, I got a multi-million-dollar plan that I had now for the expanding to be a really big private, not a private, but a big museum down there. I got $25 million to build that museum. And I knew that the problem's going to be here. Something's going to happen here in this area. Let's get ahead of the game and find out. So I knew that the problem was over on the other side of the river, because the people over there had a real problem losing money. And what ended up with that was that I decided to put in a new freeway back in here. I put $27 million up for a new freeway up here. We took another $1 million just for the planning to do all this stuff. Yeah, I'm a futurist. I'm thinking about the future. I think about what to do. And the problems that we're dealing with now can be handled. We don't have to throw them out to the bridge. This can be handled if it is properly handled. And I hope that don't think of me as someone that shouldn't be talked to because I'm the private citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Hine, followed by Corey Hine.
Madam Vice Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and the public. This is now the third workshop that I've been to. Very excited to see that it's a packed house and hearing all sides of the community, of what their wants are and what their needs are. I think the first one, we talked about how we want, and to dream big is what I look at. I want to be on the positive side of things. The second meeting that we came to talked about a little bit of the revenue of what that could do for our loved police and fire and city staff, and how that revenue can support them. The third thing that I noticed tonight was Mr. Bade's speech about the history here. It's interesting to see how chopped up this land is, and it has 188 acres. What's interesting to me is we do want the rodeo grounds. We do want cool April nights. We, again, want it all. Is there a way to reconfigure this area so that everybody's happy? And I think that's what these workshops are to do, is to hear folks. We have a great team right now that might take that to the next level and say, what can we have in this area? So I think this is very exciting times. I just hope that it's not shut down. It sounds like the rodeo grounds, there's a lot to do there. There's leases that there's issues. It sounds like there's a lot of maintenance issues on the Civic Center that we as public need to think about, because that's a lot of money that will be coming out of what could go into this area. So I just hope that we all have an open mind and are positive, and to see what can come out of this plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
My wife kind of stole all my thunder there. So I'd like to say thank you to the City Council, thank you city staff, thank you folks in the audience for letting me be a part of this conversation and just listen to you folks today. My name is Corey Hine. I too am a lifelong resident of the North State. I left for a little while to go to college, came back in the late 1990s, and I've been teaching and coaching for 23 years in our local community, and just love Reading, and I'm just really happy to be a part of it. Like a lot of folks here, I've spent a lot of time over the last few months just following this dialogue and trying to conceptualize what a new civic area might mean to our future. To be honest, for years I've had conversation after conversation with people about revitalizing a riverfront in the Reading area. When I traveled to areas and saw some over here like Bend, Oregon, or even Old Town Sac, I always leave those communities leaving just energized about what possibilities we could have in our own community to enjoy our river and what that could be like for our families. For years, we've always wondered, and conversations have happened about where could a development like this happen. Would it be down the river? How would it be built? Who would fund it? What would it look like? And I think right now, we actually, for the first time in my lifetime, we have an opportunity before us to maybe make something like that happen for this town and our community. We're discussing a vision as we speak. We're sharing our ideas. And to be honest, with federal stimulus money to be allotted in the near future, if there's ever a time that Reading's going to make this move and clean up the parking area and the traffic area and the roads in and out, this might be the time in the next few years. I'm cautiously optimistic that we can develop the area, and I want to be respectful of people who have spoken about the riverfront and whatnot throughout the day and these meetings. But recently I took a trip down the river and we parked in the Posse grounds. We did a guided fishing trip, and I got to be honest, when we parked the truck, it didn't feel safe. The area back there, even in the middle of the day, didn't feel safe. People coming and going. When we got in the river, we paddled upriver. There were all sorts of homeless camps, and the river just hadn't been preserved like I think some people might think that it is. If you haven't been down the river in a while, or you've never been down it, I would encourage you to just take a drift on a sunny day and see what our river looks like from that point, from just above the Turtle Bay area all the way to the Cypress Bridge. It's strewn with just all sorts of bad stuff. I want us to find a balance where we can have progress and we can respect our traditions and our values in this town, our events. But this could be a new heart to our city, a place where we could have a rodeo and a concert that we can't even imagine at this point how awesome that might be for our community, for concerts and things of that nature. I believe this transformation is only going to lead to, our more growth for our amazing city and our community. We're already a destination. People come to visit Shasta Lake, the rodeo, Lassen Park, Burning Falls, the Sundial Bridge, cool April nights. Like, why wouldn't we want to make Reading the best possible version of Reading that it could possibly be for us?
Are you about finished?
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm excited and hopeful for the opportunity before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, council members? Yes, we're done. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we do try to make it accessible. You can watch us online. You heard how Mr. Tippin shared how you can communicate with us. You can always send us emails, leave voicemail messages. Please check out the survey. I am respectful of people who are concerned about our public health issues, and I am too. This is the first night I've been in a council meeting that I haven't worn a mask in I can't remember how long. And I mourn the loss of many of our community and family members who couldn't join us here tonight. But back to the issue of our workshop. If there aren't any more speakers. Mike.
Yeah, I just have one observation, and you can take it or leave it for whatever you think it's worth. This is a hard matter. There's lots of opposing views and different things and things for us to take into consideration. It would be helpful for me if people came, and particularly the Rodeo Association and McConnell, and said we are on the same page, not we are on different pages. I think that would make a stronger community bond. However they want to go forward, it would make our job easier. I don't think it's our job to be the arbiter or the mediator or the decision maker. It ultimately is the decision maker, but it would help us and would help me in particular if at the next meeting or somewhere they could come and go, we're on the same page, we're happy, because there's a lot of trust involved, and trust is it's easy to lose and hard to create. But just that observation for whatever it's worth.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mazzano?
I'd like to get Steve Bade to come back up for a question, please. Thanks for staying tonight, Steve. I appreciate it. It's late, but it'll be quick. Tonight we heard a lot of concerns about a lot of different things in this project, and one of the things that stands out, certainly for me, is all this talk about the riparian areas. It's my understanding from your presentation that these areas are protected. Am I correct?
Do you want me to answer that? Or you want to go ahead? All right. So, they are protected because of the grants that are applied to those, and the improvements have been installed. They're also protected through an open space, easements. They're protected from the floodplain that's in that area. So they are protected. They're it's a riparian area that's been acknowledged by the state. It's been acknowledged by a number of grants. So, that protects it, and it's considered with any development that would be in that space for certain.
Great, thank you.
I would just add that it's owned by the city of Reading, and the biggest protection is actually afforded by that ownership and what you decide to do with it. So if a council as a body wants to protect it and put a conservation easement over it or something, you may do so.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
As far as the extending of the public contact, I think I could speak for all of us up here. I've lost count of the emails that I've gotten. I read them all, and I know that they're putting them up on the social media site. Keep sending the emails. For those that are at home listening, keep sending the emails and give us your thoughts. And we take those under advisement. And you do have a voice, and this is how you express it. You can show up here and express your opinions and bring your ideas to the table, or you can do it from the recliner in your living room while you're watching it on television, and we appreciate that. I think one thing that's really clear tonight, for me anyway, is the 73-year history of a rodeo. It couldn't be any clearer by your participation, that it's the fiber of this community, and I'm getting a sense from the people that want to put this together that they understand that. And understanding that, I gotta believe it's in the big picture. It's in the big picture. And as Councilman DeQuisto said, to come back and say that we're on the same page would sure make life a lot easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Winter? No?
I have no comment. Thanks.
All right. Well, maybe our city manager had any final comments? No?
No, I'll just remind everybody that next Thursday, November 17th at 5:15 in the same council chambers will be the final scheduled workshop.
All right. That's what I was going to say. Again, be sure and provide your input. We welcome it, as Councilmember Mazzano said, and appreciate that you took the time to share this evening with us. And we look forward to having you join us again next Thursday. Thank you.
Adjourn.